There are a number of myths in economics that are taught in classes, where economists will teach this in their public writings to the press, at public audiences, that paint a distorted picture of the world, and these myths tend to make the case for a bigger than optimal government. My name is Matt Rosu. This is part of a series where we're examining these myths. To check out the previous videos, look at the description, the links will be there. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the myth that the United States has a weak social safety net. This is a myth I fell prey to, including in my teaching, which I'm embarrassed to admit it. I don't like that I made this mistake, but everybody makes mistakes. So I'm hoping through this video that you won't fall prey to this myth. If you're an educator especially, but even if you've had economics and you hear about it, you will realize this isn't true, because this is everywhere. So the myth that the US doesn't have a strong social safety net, this is really everywhere. You might hear it in several ways, that the US doesn't do much to help the poor, that European countries give far more aid to the poor than the United States does. This can be found in many, many textbooks, but this isn't confined to a left versus right thing. As mentioned, I fell prey to this. I'm definitely, on economic issues, right of center. You would think this would be a left versus right thing. It isn't. Greg Mankiw, author of best-selling economics textbook, met Greg. It's fantastic. He actually was kind enough to write a blurb for my Broadway economics book. He actually got this wrong in his textbook, or at least in his writings. In an article advocating against a bigger government for the New York Times, he wrote, "It aims to assist people who are struggling in our rough and tumble market economy." This is talking about aid, bigger government aid proposed under Biden. On its face, that instinct doesn't sound bad. Many Western European nations have more generous social safety nets than the United States. The Biden plan takes a big step in that direction. You can find quotes by Paul Krugman, has a textbook, and many others that are saying the same thing, many times forcefully, that the US does not do a good job of taking care of the poor, that there's not a social safety net. This myth is so pervasive, I'm going to show a short clip of several individuals discussing how the US doesn't do much to help the poor.
What would an actual poverty-reducing agenda look like? Well, first of all, it would require more money. It would, the United States, we have much more poverty than any other advanced country. We also spend very much less on aid to the poor. It's not a mystery what's going on here. It would require acknowledging that the poverty programs we have are, for the most part, not that bad. All of these conservative policy white papers, whatever, come out and they start by saying, "Oh, we have hundreds of programs," and which is true, but most of them are tiny, and we actually have only a handful of big programs. And the one that they like to beat on the most, food stamps, is actually a really good program.
The States is known for having this great abundance, and at the same time, alongside that abundance, there is widespread poverty and economic insecurity.
Sometimes you question, we're in the United States of America. How can the citizens be going through such a issue? We always boast that we're a superpower, that we are the richest in the world, and things just don't make sense.
What are the facts on this? Well, the facts are the US actually does a lot. There are dozens and dozens of programs that provide aid to the poor. There is SNAP, program for food, what were known as food stamps. There is housing assistance. There's general welfare cash payments. There's energy assistance, and a host of other ways that the US provides support to the poor. So how much support is provided to poor families? It's a surprisingly difficult question to get an answer to. You would think, just add it up. Well, it's tough to add it up, right? We're talking about tens of millions of people. But we can piece together quite a bit to get a pretty good picture of how much it is. First, we'll go with an article from Ed Conard. All of the specifics I'm mentioning, you'll find links to in the description. With Ed Conard, mentions last year, not counting the 1.6 trillion the government spent on retirees. So excluding that, America spent 1.25 trillion helping the poor. That's with welfare, Medicaid, and disability. That's enough to give every person in the bottom 20 percentile under the age of 65 years old $22,500 or $90,000 per family of four. It's a pretty powerful quote. Certainly, not all of this money goes to the poorest 20%, but even if it's half of that amount, and remember, our poverty line is such where only about, it depends on the year, but maybe say 13% or so of Americans might be in poverty in any given year. So 20% covers the poor and a lot of near poor. If half of that 90,000 goes to the bottom quintile, bottom 20%, that's $45,000. That's well above the poverty line. That number is actually consistent with information from a book written by Phil Graham and a couple of his co-authors, who find that the U.S. pays on average $15,000 in cash or near cash benefits, but then in their book is arguing on why some of these statistics are distorted, that there's another $30,000 in-kind benefits that are provided to the average poor family. So the 15 plus the 30 averages to the $45,000. Once again, we're above the poverty line. And a new article published by an American Economics Association journal discusses this issue too, and they find that, this is again a quote, after accounting for indirect taxes and in-kind transfers, the U.S. redistributes a greater share of national income to low-income groups than any other European country. That's a powerful statement, right? The U.S. provides a greater share of national income to the poor than any other country in Europe or any country in Europe. I had not known that. And I had taught for a number of years thinking the U.S. was not really providing quite as much. So why is this important? First, it's simply important to know the facts. We can debate on policies. We can have differences of opinion on how much in financial assistance we should be providing poorer families. Some will want more, some will want less, right? That's a good argument to have. But we should all be starting with the same set of facts when we're making these arguments. And for a long time, a lot of us, I say a lot of us because I was in this, were under a distorted view that the U.S. was not providing much help for the poor. Second, given this distorted picture, this is really relevant for what's often thought of as the equality versus efficiency debate. So equality of incomes versus efficiency of the economy. And there's a bit of a trade-off here. Often, to get more income equality, you have to provide programs that will, one, reduce some incentives for work, which will decrease gross domestic product now, and because of that, it could also reduce economic growth, so it could reduce the long-run prospects for higher gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the output. This is pretty crucial, right? Because when gross domestic product grows, it means there's more being produced, there's more income in society as a whole, and with that more income, of course, there's more that you can use to help poorer families or for any other purpose. What we see in the US is the US has higher GDP. We've had in the US, there's been programs like more economic freedom than most countries year in and year out. And there's areas where the US isn't as good. There's years where it's better, years where it's worse. And the gross domestic product in the US, it has grown dramatically. But the US is also, from that, providing significant amounts of aid to the poor. When you start to have arguments like the US isn't doing much, it might prompt policies that will cause lower growth in the future, which will hurt future generations of Americans. And that is what we really don't want. So this is, once again, another myth. When you discuss the myth, it would seem to indicate that we should have a bigger government, that we should have more government intervention. That's why it's part of this series. And I hope you learned a little bit here. I hope that after watching this, you won't fall prey to the same thing that I once fell prey to and I once believed. If you like this sort of content, please click like and subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate that. And you'll get updates when new videos are dropped. Until next time, see you in the next video.